least they're capturing that IP, and ostensibly gets them into more languages more quickly. And really, if you look at it, language, not geography, is the big barrier to commerce right now, right? It's easy to get around the world, it's easy to sort of communicate around the world, but it's not inherently easy to communicate in different languages. So if you have a way to do that, and even if it's a crowd of 10 people, we've done crowdsourcing pilots with 3 people, and that proves the concept, and all of a sudden there are 30 people, and then it becomes 100. But it doesn't have to be thousands of people like Facebook style, because the Facebook thing is, to me, a bit of a joke, because even though it's 65 languages, the Facebook UI is 5,000 strings, right? Sun is really the leader in community translation. They've been translating open office documentation, 50,000 pages, for a long time. Sorry.
Now, as you're going through there's a difference in my mind between a community and a crowd in terms of the linkages and relationships within. So the church is obviously a community.
Right.
I'm not sure if Adobe is a community or a crowd. But do you approach a project differently or set it up differently depending on whether you think it's a community or a crowd?
No, I think it's a good distinction. I probably haven't sort of made that connection between crowd and community, but I like where you're going with that. I mean, yeah, there's community where it's sort of shared values and shared background and shared reasons for doing something. Where crowd, a lot of the folks that are translating for software companies happen to be engineering students. So if you look at, as we go into this, it's engineering students that are trying to make their bones, trying to get jobs, we're working with certain software platforms, and so they're doing it for that reason. You might be the owner of a systems integrator in Beijing, and you're encouraging your employees to do it, otherwise known as telling them to do it. And so that is a different motivation than the kid still at university trying to get some experience on his resume and get on the scoreboard and say, snapshot that, maybe get a certificate. Like Sun does a great job of recognizing their volunteer community translators by giving them certificates. As silly as it sounds, these guys are putting it on the resume, and it actually helps them get jobs. Say I translated this Java documentation into let's just continue to use Vietnam. Now I can get a job. George?
Just to go back to this case of the Russian, what's the licensing arrangement when work like that is done? Shared through Lingoteks?
Licensing arrangement. Okay, so we license our software based on the concurrent user model. So either it's installed or delivered as a service. So if you have 10 concurrent users, so it's unlimited named users. It's licensed on a concurrent user model. It starts at 10 concurrent users and it scales up. Because the reality is, when people are starting community translation projects, they're starting small. So they're trying to get used to it, trying to understand it, trying to figure out the interest. They start with a few, and the idea, we have this process of going through a pilot, signing up for a monthly fee. Generally, it's 10 to 25 that people sign up for, and then they scale from there. So, we look at that as sort of a shared risk type situation where we're saying, we're going to try and help you, increase your community size and production in your community. Where you say, you know what, we need 10 more licenses, we need 20 more licenses, so we're getting that kind of volume. That being said, just to be clear, concurrent users, it could be 100 named users, but only 10 are on at any given time. Look at translation especially, right? People working in different time zones, so switch around the world. That being said, translators working all times of day and night, so who knows? Finish your question?
Yeah, no, I'm sure.
Okay. Okay, this is Scott Bacon's slide. I think this is sort of a little bit of a highbrow international wealth equalization. I'll skip the title, but one thing I will say, though, is that one of the things we talk about as sort of a value or a philosophy in the company is that we want to make more people translators. So if you look at the goal of the software, we're really trying to make more people translators. So if you have 200, 300,000, whatever the worldwide view of professional translators is, we're trying to add more tools, more functionality to make it easier to use and introduce leverage into the model and say, we're trying to make more people translators, if that makes sense. We think there's high value to that. That being said, sort of staying on a higher brow view, which is we're looking at different ways where we can expand the model to include, sort of micropayments. So if there's only some segment of professional translators, how can we expose more people in developing countries to translation? How can we get them to say, hey, here is a low cost to get into using existing skills and let you use translation. So we're integrating this platform in with PayPal. We're having discussions with Kiva to say, how can we do this where we can actually have people start translation jobs, mini translation agencies around the world to start contributing and gaining meaningful employment. So, I feel like I've talked about a lot of this stuff. I'll touch on it briefly. So the must-haves are really crowd engagement. There does have to be some corralling of the crowd, signing them up, educating them, training on them, sort of having some purpose. Why are you asking me to translate? Why are you introducing me to this concept? There has to be some sort of UI that's easy to use. A lot of these people are not traditionally professional translators. So it can't be, this old school client server, model of UI for translation. It has to be very webby, easy to use, intuitive, lightweight training to get up to speed. It has to be fast. We have different issues around the world. We're setting up a co-location center in China, and we're nearly done with that, simply because access to our servers in the U.S. has been, has high latency. So getting on, so there's access for the Chinese student network has been critical. So speed is important, right? Web-based app, lots of benefits. One potential downside, speed, right, and offline access. So we're trying to address that. There has to be sort of a flexible workflow. Different kinds of content requires different kinds of quality, different kinds of crowds, or let's even define it separately, different kinds of communities have different types of just quirks, right, and needs. So let's make it flexible, not say you have to fit into this hierarchical structure. You can define what these steps in the workflow might be. And a way to collaborate. Collaborate not just on, hey, I can participate and get 5 chunks. You can get 5 chunks, but instant messaging, leaving notes, discussion boards, sort of walling each other within the application. Because we're sort of a relatively small company. There's about 20 of us. You can't build everything that everybody wants, right? Even if you're a big company like Facebook, you still can't build everything that everybody wants. So the idea of allowing for widgets or gadgets to allow for customization of software within your environment, and people can selectively use and build their own UIs, right? So Salesforce, one of the great leaders in software as a service for CRM, they do something very similar with their marketplace, right? They allow for third-party software developers to integrate in with Salesforce and have users pick which applications they want to run.
Yeah, regarding engaging crowd, what sort of mechanism you are using to engage crowd? Like there has to be something to roll the ball. Then how do you motivate crowd?
Yeah, generally what we've seen is that there are some interested parties to begin with. So it's not the content centers saying out of blue they want to do a crowd. So they get some pressure from partners, usually a lot of software companies, they want more content in there, and they're providing a way to do it. So I think scoreboards, providing incentives, so it could be, comps to conferences, it could be swag, like, an Adobe backpack, whatever the case may be. But the idea of scoring, providing some sort of, I don't think crowdsourcing inherently has to mean free, right? We're talking a lot about volunteer translators, and that makes sense in a nonprofit world, but, in other ways, it could just be micropayments. So I don't think it's mutually exclusive to do crowdsourcing and have payment models associated with that.
Let's talk about the scenario where, for example, there is somebody who is quite well educated and he has got repute in that domain, localization domain or translation domain. And if you want to engage that person like via the medium of community or crowdsourcing, and he can't spare so much time like doing that thing, and his rating will always go down, or maybe he'll do it for 1 minute or 2 minutes every day.
Right.
Like he is not interested in money or something, like he's in order to satisfy his ego. Like how would you